We have recently been part of a working group at University of Hertfordshire on the topic shown on the screen. This presentation aims to summarise some of our thoughts arising and provoke similar considerations from other educators and learners. Firstly, our interest in this area arose partly as a result of our own shared interests in sports coaching. Cricket coach John Buchanan wrote a chapter entitled Make Yourself Redundant, where he explains his aim is to make the player their own best coach who knows their game inside out. The coach can then pull back and allow the player to take charge of their own preparation and game execution, leaving the coach to attend to more strategic and long-term planning matters. Vygotsky proposed a zone of proximal development comprised by a range of ability with and without the help of a more capable other. A scaffolding of facilitation, alternating between providing direct support and allowing periods of independent self-analysis. So the coach is constantly pulling back from individuals and then returning to assist them with the learning process. Eddie Jones wants players in complete control of their schedule and standards by the 2019 Rugby World Cup, believing that if players are to think for themselves and adapt to on-field problems, they must be empowered to deal with off-field issues. He says, "We want the players to be responsible, self-driven and self-reliant." This can link to self-determination theory. That is, an autonomy-supportive coaching style can give the players more choice and control to fulfill their need for autonomy. Thus, players are more likely to fulfill their potential, grow and perform better. In this journal article, Smith's quote highlights the motivational power of ownership, which lifts resilience. Steve Kerr experimented with his NBA basketball team, letting them coach instead of him in a competitive match. He claims the added responsibility made them function better as a team, with higher levels of focus, better communication, more individuals accountable for team outcomes, and providing new perspectives. Here are some examples of coaches Percy Cerity and Doc Councilman deliberately promoting athlete self-reliance within the context of individual sports. And now we're going to return more directly to the setting of higher education in which we both work. Our experience has been that self-directed students are more likely to succeed and be more employable. Poor performance seems to be associated with having been educationally disempowered or directed by the motivations of others. Students have told us that they've previously been spoon-fed, only went to university due to pressure from teachers, or that they're lazy or lacking self-motivation. Rogers urges us to trust learners as active participants in education. In his view, we cannot teach, but we can facilitate others to become fully functioning people who have learned how to learn. But many are unprepared to make choices, to learn from mistakes, and to live with the uncertainty as they try to select directions to take. We have heard a lot of senior managers in higher education persisting in using the term pedagogy in their presentations, when pedagogy relates to the education of children, whereas Knowles' andragogy more appropriately relates to the education of adults, who tend to take more responsibility for their own learning process. Heutagogy is a form of self-determined learning where learners are highly autonomous and well prepared for the demands of dynamic complexity. Learners are active and proactive in identifying how their learning needs will be met. Double loop learning means moving beyond just solving problems to also changing the assumptions, beliefs and values that underpin our problem solving. We could conceive of a continuum of gojis. Higher level learners, who are more experienced and take greater responsibility, will require less instructor control and more freedom or flexibility in course structuring. Students should be encouraged to develop learner maturity and self-reliance, and less dependency on being directed by educators or course requirements. This table contrasts the different dependencies, resources, reasons, motivations and roles of the educator in each approach. There is a shift from getting students to learn to getting students to understand how they learn, and the learner progressively sets the learning agenda more, developing their own learning identity. Heutagogy tends to develop capabilities rather than mere competencies, and learners who are well equipped for the complexities of the modern workplace. Capability is the capacity of learners to use competence in familiar, unfamiliar and changing situations. Learning is most effective when it allows learners to react to evolving circumstances. We would argue there is a moral aspect generally to educational approaches, and specifically to the facilitation of self-directed and self-determined learners. We think some of the things we do as educators, however well-intentioned, directly disempower students. We do as little as possible for our students, so they can do as much as possible for themselves. Some authors have suggested we are all naturally heutagogical but are schooled out of it. This means changing some traditional roles of the educator, from sage on the stage to guide on the side to the educator as an expert learner role model. This requires a structured process of scaffolding and a resistance to providing easy answers. Students started their own WhatsApp group on their educational experiences, sharing information and supporting each other. The educator gathered from experts some common problem coaching scenarios. In groups, students researched their responses to their chosen scenario, presented back in a format of their choice to their peers, and then compared with the experts' responses. Socially interactive, self-directed and self-determined learning. Staff wanted to have a lecture for all students in a year group on a business training opportunity that was only likely to interest the specialised few. Staff wanted to deliberately try to sell degree courses to parents at open days, when it's the students that will actually be undertaking the course. Other directed, other determined, forcing people to be passive learners. Here are two links to examples of idiosyncratic and meaningful assessment artifacts. Seb has actively chosen which aspects to explore. He uses self-selected theories to think about practice and vice versa, and relates all of this to his own development and future aspirations. Heutagogy is about self-discovery. Seb is an empowered, autonomous learner. How do we encourage students to connect with their own motivations and take greater responsibility for learning how to learn? Please refer to the quote in blue. We hope that this presentation has provoked some thought about the development of the self-directed and self-determined learner.